We normally start the daily routine in English with I wake up. But there are more advanced ways of saying I wake up. Instead, you could say I get out of bed at 6 a.m. instead of I wake up at 6 a.m. Next, I wash my face quickly before going to the kitchen. But there are other ways to say I wash my face quickly. You could also say I freshen up quickly before going to the kitchen. Then I have breakfast. But there are other options here too. You could say I have a leisurely breakfast. I have a swift breakfast. I grab a quick breakfast. Have a leisurely breakfast means that you do it slowly. You take your time. But if you have a swift breakfast or grab a quick breakfast, you're having it quickly before going out perhaps. When I finish, I go to college. Or to make this more advanced, you could say, when I finish, I head off to college. To get to college, I go by bus. Or you could say this. To get to college, I catch the bus. It's very common in English to use the word catch when you use public transport. You can catch the bus, catch the train, catch a taxi. My classes start at 9 a.m. Or you could also say my classes get going at 9 a.m. This is a more casual, informal way of saying this. My classes get going at 9 a.m. They start at 9 a.m. I eat lunch at 12 p.m. But there are other ways of saying I eat lunch. You could say I pause for lunch at 12 p.m. Or I stop for lunch at 12 p.m. Or I break for lunch at 12 p.m. Finally, I go home at 4 p.m. Or instead of saying I go home, you could say finally I head home at 4 p.m. And when I arrive home, I put my shoes away. But another way of saying arrive is when I get through the door. This is a more advanced way of saying arrive home, when I get through the door. We normally say I get through the door when you're talking about arriving at your own home. When I get through the door, I put my shoes away. I sit on the sofa. Well, this lady is not sitting on the sofa. She's doing something else. She says this, I crash out on the sofa. This is a very informal way of saying lying on the sofa when you're tired after a hard day. I crash out on the sofa. And I watch TV. Or you could say, and I flick through the channels on my TV. If you're looking at many different channels on the TV, not just one. Sometimes I read a book. Or another way of saying this, sometimes I get stuck into a book. After I help with the housework. But there are other ways of saying housework too. You could say after I help with the household chores. Chores is the same as jobs, but we often use chores to talk about work you do around the house on a regular basis. After I help with the household chores. My mother gives me dinner at 7 p.m. Or another way of saying this, my mother puts dinner on the table at 7 p.m. I usually go to bed at 10 p.m. But more informally, you could also say, usually I hit the sack at 10 p.m. Hit the sack is a very informal way of saying go to bed and go to sleep. So we've looked at some simple ways of describing the daily routine and some more advanced ways. But let's now practice together. Let's practice the more advanced way of saying your daily routine. Listen to me and then repeat afterwards. I get out of bed at 6 a.m. I freshen up quickly before going to the kitchen. Then I have a leisurely breakfast. When I finish, I head off to college. To get to college, I catch the bus. My classes get going at 9 a.m. I stop for lunch at 12 p.m. Finally, I head home at 4 p.m. When I get through the door, I put my shoes away. I crash out on the sofa. And I flick through the channels on my TV. Sometimes I get stuck into a book. After, I help with the household chores. My mother puts dinner on the table at 7 p.m. Usually, I hit the sack at 10 p.m.